Good evening. Are we ready to begin?
We are ready to begin, Time Binstock.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Well, thank you, Rabbi Yoni, and welcome to St. John's Wood members who are joining us. And thank you to Rabbi Levine for joining us this evening, and welcome to members of Belmont Shul. I'd like to thank Rabbi Daniel Levine and Rabbi Golker for having involved in arranging this program called a MATMID program, where we're going to be focusing on issues with shiurim in the local communities and a shiur from Rana Dayanim at a later stage in the program. This particular session, this term session, is really devoted to gerus, to conversion. And I thought, given my sort of dual role as a community rabbi and as a dayan of the Beth Din, I will give us an introductory session here as far as gerus is concerned. And of course, I'm very happy at some point in our discussion to open it to questions that you may have. And you may have questions that you want to ask, and you might want to ask them anonymously. So please feel free to use the chat feature, and you can ask whatever question you wish. I'll do my best to answer them. Wherever we are in the Jewish year, whatever parasha may be, issues of gerus are never far below the surface. And in last week's parasha of Shemos, we read about how Yitzro converts to Judaism. It's not explicit in the parasha, but it's implicit that Moshe Rabbeinu, when he goes there and his interaction with Yitzro, as our rabbis explained, that he tried out all the religions of the world, and Judaism was the one he eventually comes to. So the implication of gerut, of conversion, is there as well. And we find when Moses comes to Egypt and he goes in to see Pharaoh, as we read at the end of last week's parasha, he says to him, together with Aharon, "Let my people go. Let us go for a 3-day journey in the desert where we'll worship our God." And of course, the question is asked by many of the commentators, isn't Moses being somewhat disingenuous? Isn't he misleading Pharaoh here? I mean, the intention wasn't just to have a 3-day journey. They wanted to go, get away, go to the land of Israel. And how can Moses stay? Well, just let us go for 3 days. So there's a lovely explanation by the late Rabbi Yosef Ber Soloveitchik, Zechet Tzadik Levrocha, who explains that it could have been, the possibility might have been there for Pharaoh to have said, all right. You know, we've seen in previous generations that when a Pharaoh saw the wisdom of a Joseph, he was to say, here's a man in whom there is the Spirit of God. He was prepared to appoint him as his overseer to run his country. And maybe a Pharaoh might have been so impressed with what Moses had to say, all right, I'll let you go. And what would have been the plan, says Rabbi Soloveitchik? The Israelites would have gone out to the desert, they would have received the Torah, gone back to Egypt, converted the Egyptians, and then the Israelites would have gone on to the land of Israel. So the issue of gerut there, as I say, is implicit in many parashiot. But let's return to our subject, our topic, and I'll explain the process and then perhaps deal with your questions. I've had the privilege and responsibility of dealing in gerut, in matters of conversion, now for more than 30 years since I've been a member of the Beth Din. And I've never failed to be surprised at the range of backgrounds we find of people who are interested in giyur, in conversion, humbled the candidates that we meet. Really humbling. And for those who want some specific information, there is a useful article on our website, www.us.org.uk/article/conversion2. And if you Google London Beth Din and conversion, it will take you to that site. Once someone has converted to Judaism, they are immediately treated like any other Jew. There's no probationary period. We'll see how you get on for a few years and then we'll decide. No. Says the Rambam in Hilchos Isuri Biyah, chapter 12, Halacha 17, that the non-Jews, Kashinitgairu, once they have been converted, the Kabbalah Alem Kol HaMitzvot BaTorah, they've accepted upon themselves the mitzvot of the Torah. Hari Hen Ki Yisrael L'Chol Davar. They are like all other Jews, as it says, Chuka Achat Yeh Lachem. And it's one Jew, so they're treated like any other Jew. They're not so regarded as second-class citizens in any way. Indeed, further, once someone has converted, you're not allowed to out them, as it were. Oh, yeah, so-and-so is converted. You mustn't say that. If they want you, that's one thing, but you can't convert, you can't sort of allude to someone's origins. You know, what's it like? How does the kosher sandwich compare with a ham sandwich you eat? You mustn't say that, chas v'shalom. And I myself was guilty of this some years ago. A convert was visiting my shul. She was of Caribbean origin, and I had misunderstood. I thought she had told me she was quite happy to be open about her origins. And at the Kiddush, I introduced her to one of our team, one of our members of our shul, saying, so-and-so was one of our best graduates. I heard afterwards, and I have received late after Shabbos a call from another rabbi with whom she was close, and saying she was very upset. She thought that you weren't supposed to reveal candidates, converts' origins. And I phoned her up and said, I'm sorry, you're absolutely right. You know, without your permission, I shouldn't have said what I said. And so if a person wants to talk about where they've come from, what their journey has been, that's fine. But if they come to another community and no one knows them, and you may happen to know, then you have no right whatsoever to talk about their origins, to remind them of what their background was at all. Once someone is converted, all of us have a special obligation to show love and concern to such an individual. The Torah says, "Va'ahavtem et hager," you should love the convert. And the Rambam, Moses Maimonides, in a famous letter, he points out that we're commanded in the Torah to honor and revere our parents. Says Rambam, it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah, you should love your mummy and daddy. Doesn't say that. It says you should revere your mother and father. And indeed, says Rambam, you can revere and honor those, even those you do not love. But you're required to show correct behavior. However, says Rambam, we are commanded, you should love the convert. Because that convert, that candidate, has severed the previous family ties and culture, relationships, etc., to come tachat kaveh hashchina, under the canopy of the divine presence. And so you've got to reach out even more to such a person because they don't have the benefit and blessing of the background that you enjoy as a member of the community. So you should love the convert. And you should therefore treat someone as converted with extra sensitivity. You really got to go out of your way to be sensitive and kind to such a person. Let me explain the process of, as I say, what's involved in conversion. How many conversions do we do in the London Bet Din? Probably about 50 a year. It's been that sort of figure for a number of years. And whilst it's true to say the majority are because of a Jewish girlfriend or boyfriend, partner, they may have already become married, etc., a significant proportion are completely sincere, no other motive whatsoever. We've had people of all religions and none who come and want to convert, whether Catholic or Protestant, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, etc., atheists, whatever their background they've grown, and we've had them all come to us, and of all ages, young, single, married, old, entire families who want to come and convert, a father and mother and 4 or 5 kids who've wanted to convert to Judaism en masse. We had a chap in his 70s. He'd always been interested, but his wife wasn't. They were both non-Jewish, obviously, and she wasn't interested. So he put it down. He didn't want to disrupt his marriage in any way. And then, sadly, his wife died of cancer. And he found a note that she left him saying, I hope you will now follow your dream. And he came to us and he wanted to take forward his dream to convert. And we did, we converted him. But as I say, people come from all sorts of ages. Obviously, if someone approaches, we want to know that they're genuine. And like many other areas in life, there'll be people that have spurious motives. There'll be nutcases who just don't know where they are and who they are and so on. And so many rabbis of communities will receive inquiries about Judaism. I mean, many years ago, I was a rabbi in Golders Green, and it was the very first year that Chabad did their menorah in Golders Green Station. That was the very first year they did it. They put up one of these large public menorahs. And we'd come home from being there, and we were lighting the menorah in our home. And there's a knock at the door, and a Thursday says, Rabbi, can you circumcise me? I want to convert to Judaism. And I said, well, we can't do it straight away. I gave him some idea. But this person just, as I say, that was his reaction to seeing the menorah in Golders Green. But more often than not, if someone expresses an interest in Judaism, they will approach a local rabbi. And these days, of course, there's so much information on the internet that's available for people. And in social media, there are all sorts of chat groups that will offer guidance, some correct and some misleading, to any potential convert that's out there. They will engage often in correspondence with our department. We have a Geirut department headed by Rabbi Rashi Simon and his secretary, Karen Mahala, and they will deal with a lot of the correspondence that comes in from people who are making inquiries about conversion. I should point out that we don't charge professional fees for conversion. What do I mean? Is that once someone has been accepted as a candidate, there's a fee for opening a file, a handling fee. And at the end of the process, if someone's going to be going to the mikveh conversion, there's a fee for using the mikveh. But on the periodic basis, when candidates are meeting with a dayan at the Bet Din, they're not charged sort of professional fees for being with a dayan for an hour of his time. And when the dayanim are then sitting down at a later stage as a group to have a case conference to discuss, and we're spending many hours discussing it. I once estimated that it probably costs the United Synagogue about £3,000 for each convert. And it's a wonderful chesed the United Synagogue is doing. We wouldn't dream of charging what it costs to do so, because then it wouldn't in any way want money to interfere with the integrity and genuineness and sincerity of the process. But of course, there are costs to the candidate along the way, which I'll explain it shortly. And so, as I say, a potential convert, someone who's interested in Judaism, may contact a local rabbi. They'll visit a synagogue. They'll do their own line research, and then they come along to a shul. More often than not, I'll get to be contacted, or my colleague Rabbi Yoni or Rabbi Mendel Cohen will be contacted by someone who's, I'm interested in Judaism. Can I visit your synagogue? And look, obviously, we'll say, well, obviously these days, due diligence and security procedures and so on, but you'll have people who are not Jewish visiting a synagogue. We'll assign them a member of the community that they can sit next to, follow the service, and so on and so forth. And sometimes that's at the start of a journey that they're interested in Judaism, and they take it stage by stage. Sometimes I find that many of these candidates have already started the journey themselves sometime before, and they know a lot about kashrut and Shabbat and teach themselves to read Hebrew. Sometimes when I have my first interview with a candidate, I'm amazed at what they already know. Obviously, we then have to take it forward and iron out all the gaps and so on. And sometimes people have very limited knowledge. They just have this general spiritual yearning that they want to take forward. And of course, we at the Bet Din want to know that a candidate is sincere about what they're undertaking. And so what we say to our people when they apply to us, that in order for them to have an interview at the Bet Din, they will need a letter of recommendation from an Orthodox rabbi. And so that then imposes upon the candidate the challenge of getting to know an Orthodox rabbi, to the extent that this Orthodox rabbi is prepared to write a letter of recommendation, fill in a reference form that they know this particular candidate, that they can, to the best of their ability, say this person is sincere and is genuine and is converting for the right sorts of motives. Obviously, as I mentioned before, many candidates are doing it because of a Jewish partner, friend, etc., boyfriend, girlfriend. And at that point, if they are converting for that reason, we'll still want to know that this conversion is a genuine one, that it may have been initiated because of the wish to marry a Jewish party, but we would nevertheless need to know that when they're going through that process and when they come to the end of it, that is something of which they are sincere about. Now, at the beginning, when we are engaging in correspondence with them, not from the part of the Dayanim, but say on the part of Rabbi Simons and his secretary, we'll point out to a candidate, look, and a rabbi may have this conversation with someone he meets in his synagogue. Judaism doesn't require non-Jews to convert to Judaism in order to have a path to heaven. There are many paths to God, many paths to heaven. If you're a good person, you're moral, upright, according to our Jewish teaching, you are a Noachide, you keep the 7 Noachide laws, basically believe in God and live a good moral life, you've got a portion of the world to come. Why do you need to become Jewish? And we'll mention this to any particular candidate to just say, look, be a friend of the Jewish people, admire our teachings, but you don't have to convert to Judaism. If nevertheless they say we still are interested and want to convert, then we'll point out, look, there are practicalities, and a person, in order to convert to Judaism, needs to be living in a Jewish area. You've got to have role models around you that you can recognize what is the right sort of example that Judaism is all about. And, you need to be in a place where you can see other people who are being Shomer Shabbat, who are keeping the laws of Kashrut, who are davening with a minyan on a daily basis, who are engaging in Torah learning, and so on. And so that needs to be the sviva, the environment in which someone needs in order to nurture their conversion to Judaism. So if a person is maybe applying to us from somewhere, in the wilds, as it were, and certainly we would deal with the discussion with them on that basis, but we would just want to know that, in order to move forward at some point, they do need to be living in that sort of area. Once those preliminaries have been undertaken and the person has been, has able to obtain a letter from our local rabbi, then an appointment will be made for them to meet one of the dayanim at the Bet Din. I must apologize to sort of potential candidates out there that might have started the process or thought about it, what COVID happened. Normally, we were meeting our candidates every week at the Bet Din, and when lockdown started, we thought, how can we be seeing people and assessing, their needs and without having a chance to meet them? And for a number of months, we paused from meeting candidates for conversion purposes because of lockdown. We then came to the decision, look, we can't allow this to go on indefinitely. And so we've now resumed our meetings on a Zoom basis. Not ideal, you still can't get that, you can't communicate as effectively as you can, as I'm sure all of us appreciate, just using sort of Zoom features. But it's better than nothing. And we certainly don't want to hold up the process unduly for many people. And so we'll be meeting our candidates, as I say, on Zoom. We'll have a discussion with them. We want to find out what their motivation is, and so on and so forth, and take that forward. If a candidate is coming to us because there is a Jewish party involved, then what we will do may sound a little counterintuitive, but this is what we do. We first say, look, you have a Jewish partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, as the case may be. You may already be married in civil law to this person. What we're going to do is going to require the Jewish party to undertake study. They're going to have to study for some months, 4, 5, 6 months, etc., and see whether they are prepared to take on board a more, as it were, conscientious observance of Judaism. Because let's face it, this Jewish person was happy to strike up a relationship with someone who wasn't Jewish. And so it's not going to be good enough simply to ask the non-Jewish party to learn and study and prepare to grow in Judaism if their Jewish friend is not prepared to take those steps themselves. And how can you convert someone to Judaism if the person they're planning to marry is not going to be prepared to support that Jewish life in the right sort of way? And so the first thing we want to do is the Jewish party prepared to make the necessary changes to their life. And so, as I say, we'll appoint a tutor to that person. Our practice, of course, is to have male tutors for guys and women tutors for our female candidates. And they'll appoint that person on a one-on-one basis. We always point out to our candidates, look, you are the paying client here. This is a private arrangement that you make with this tutor. And, there are tutors that have been doing it for many years that are sort of that probably charge a bit more. And those who are newer to it that don't have the same sort of, but this is something that the candidate has to arrange between themselves and the tutor. It's not anything that the Beth Din personally deals with. And, after that person has then had those sessions, we say, with their tutor, then we'll see them again at the Bet Din. And if that has been successful, that they've been able to show that they have made changes in their lives as a result of studying with a tutor, then we can then move on to appoint a tutor for the non-Jewish party. And then, we'll take that forward and be meeting periodically with the candidates thereafter. For many in what tends to happen in the mainstream of our candidates is that we also require them, as well as to have a tutor, in due course to move in with a Jewish family. They need to see what Judaism is like from the inside. It's not enough simply to be a guest at someone's Shabbat table and you're just seeing Judaism expressed in that way. You need to have been around when Shabbat is being prepared for. You need to be able to see what Jewish life is like from within, where you can see how parents are bringing up their children, they're teaching the Torah at the table, they're dispersing tzedakah at the front door, they're coping with the joys and challenges of life, as it were, sort of seeing what it's like to be more of an insider and being nurtured in Judaism in that way. And so we have selected host families who host our candidates. Now, quite a number of candidates who are, may well be, been mature, independent individuals for some years are quite aghast. What, you expect me to move in with a family? And we appreciate that can be a challenge, but nearly always the candidates tell us afterwards it was so rewarding, that we learned so much as a result of that experience. And so, as I say, with the candidates, with the tutor and with the family, they are nurtured in their growth of Judaism. They come back and meet with the Dayanim on a periodic basis. And when we get to that opportunity to conclude that process, we're then able to move forward to the finalization, as it were. You may ask, how long does it take? On average, 2 years, between 1.5 and 2.5 years, depending on the type of person, their aptitude for study, and their the opportunity they have to make sort of changes they need to in their lives. Obviously, someone needs to be keeping Shabbat, keeping Kashrut. You can't convert to Judaism if you've got a job that's not letting you go before 6 p.m. every Friday, summer or winter. It's just not going to work. So you may have a yearning for Judaism, but it can't be the case. Similarly, someone that's, say, in a marriage relationship with a spouse who's not interested in doing it. They may have a deep yearning for Judaism, but it's just not practical. We're not interested in breaking up marriages. So be a friend of Judaism. You can sort of, as it were, be inspired by Jewish values, Jewish teachings, etc. But it can only work realistically, as I say, if the family itself is on board. For the finalization, a male needs to be circumcised. Sometimes people come to us, they've already had a circumcision. But if they're an adult, we'll arrange for them to meet with one of our senior experienced mualim. Obviously, anesthetics are used when you're dealing with an adult, and the circumcision will take place, and that's done in the presence of the mohel and 2 other people, because it needs to have 3 people present for that. And as soon as the candidate then is sufficiently recovered from that minor procedure, then both males and, of course, females would then have the final stage of an immersion at a mikveh. At that final session, the three dayanim would be present at the mikveh. Beforehand, we meet in a room adjoining the mikveh, whatever it is. Sometimes we used to do it at Kingsbury Shul, but now the mikveh is closed down. Now we do it at Hendon Shul, and we'll meet in one of the meeting rooms and have a final chat with the candidate. We'll discuss some of the halachic principles. We want to make sure that they appreciate the categories of Judaism, things that are of Torah law, rabbinic law, customs, and they're willing to undertake all of what's required of them. And then we'll invite them to stand and say the Shema. And they're going to say the Shema not simply as a reading exercise, but as a declaration of faith, that they are prepared to accept the Lord, the one God, love that Lord with all their heart, their soul, their might, and so on. And then we give them a ledger to sign, which it says that I, the undersigned, undertake to live the life of a faithful Jew or Jewess, as the case may be. And they will sign their name. And of course, they would choose a Hebrew name. And then they make their preparations to go into the mikveh. We wait until the attendant has assisted them for them to be ready. And then the 3 dayanim will enter the mikveh, and the candidate is in the mikveh and will immerse. You may be asking, what do dayanim do if it's a woman? Obviously, that's questions of modesty need to be observed. And under those circumstances, the woman will be wearing a shift that covers her completely up to her neck and down to her sleeves, and should be in the water. And in our presence, we will enter when the mikveh attendant tells us it's appropriate for us to go into the mikveh room. And then in our presence, the candidate, both male and female, as the case may be, will just highlight some of the key ideas of Judaism, so that when they immerse, they're accepting upon themselves the principles of Judaism. They will immerse in the mikveh and then say the bracha on a tefillah. It's the same bracha, the same blessing that a woman who goes to the mikveh on a monthly basis will make as well. And we'll say, Amen and Mazel Tov. And then in the case of a woman, the candidates go down again. But in the case of a woman, the dayanim will leave the mikveh room, and then the door will be closed, almost closed. And then in the presence just of the female attendants, the candidate will then remove that that garment and immerse a second time, just in the presence of the candidate, in the presence of the mikveh attendant, as any woman would when she immerses on a monthly basis. And the mikveh attendant will call out kosher, etc. That the candidate, they will say Mazel Tov to whoever it is, so and so Ben or Bat Avraham Avinu. Then at a later stage, when the candidate has got themselves dressed and sort of, as it were, more relaxed, then we'll meet up with the candidate briefly again, give them a blessing, a bracha, that the Almighty should bless them, take them forward in their journey as now becoming a ben or bar mitzvah, as it were, a son or daughter of the commandments. And many of them will have a little celebration with their family or friends, as the case may be. So that, in brief, is the process of what conversion is about. And we're very proud of the many converts that have come through and joined the Jewish community in this way. Many of them are inspirational individuals that our community has been enormously enriched by having them as part of our community. But I'm happy to deal with any particular questions you might have. You might want more information. What do you do about children? What do you do about, and there may be questions you might like to ask, and I'm happy to deal with them. If either Rabbi Levine or Rabbi Yoni want to handle any questions, I can do so myself. If you want to ask them or just put them through the chat, I'm happy to do so. Would you like to unmute people, Rabbi Yoni?
So people are free to unmute themselves if they have questions.
Can I ask a question? What is the position if a prospective candidate is a member of the liberal or reform shuls?
Can't hear you, Diane. Can't hear you.
So I was asked the question, what do we do if the candidate is a member of the liberal or reform synagogue? Okay, that was this individual's question. So the situation, a person can come from any sort of background, and that's what they do. Quite a number of our candidates have in fact already got a liberal or a reform conversion, or Masorti conversion, and they're coming to us for an upgrade. So where a candidate comes from is immaterial. However, if a candidate wants to be able to, as it were, succeed, then clearly they can't continue to be a member of the liberal reform synagogue, because that of itself, and you can have friends in the liberal reform community, why not? But as it were, to regard yourself as, well, 1 week, one Shabbat, I'll daven in so-and-so liberal synagogue, another Shabbat, I'll daven in an Orthodox synagogue, that's not going to work. Because that's the way those services are being conducted is not in accordance with Halacha. And what a candidate needs to be able to do is to show that they are observant of Halacha. And so their origins, fine. But in terms of wanting to take that conversion process through to its culmination, they will have to, as it were, sever their formal links, although obviously friendships can continue. Right, someone's asked, can a Cohen marry a convert? Answer to that very simply is no. Okay, so just as a Cohen can't marry a divorcee, a Cohen can't marry a convert. How many prospective candidates have a Jewish father, a non-Jewish mother? Quite a few. With probably, I can't think of exact percentages, but that's quite a common route where people feel a Jewish identity because they've had a Jewish father. And sometimes the mother has gone through a reform or liberal conversion, and so they've grown up. Could have gone to a Jewish school, gone to uni, been a member of the Jewish Society, etc. So we do have quite a percentage of our candidates. I'd say probably as many as 10% or more who are coming through that sort of route with a Jewish identity. And some of these people have not known any other identity except that they're not being accepted halachically. Someone's asking if they're already married, do they need to move in with the family? No, we're not going to break up marriages in that particular way. But if someone is not married, then, as I say, we will require them to live with a family. There was another question on the chat. Let me just see where we are.
There was a question higher up. Do the candidates need to live with a family for the full 2 years typically, or is it a much shorter period?
No, it's about 6 months to a year. It's not the full 2 years. It's at a later stage once the conversion process is. Interestingly, though, we often find that they have such a good relationship with their families, they want to carry on living there. It's as I say, many of them, if not most of our candidates, feel that it's been a very positive part of the experience. They've really grown to become to feel part of a family, and they maintain those friendships ever since.
There's a few more questions.
So someone wants to know if we're commanded to love the convert, and the convert goes, why can't she marry a Cohen? That's a halacha in the same. Okay, I can understand that you may feel that love is not just expressed in terms of being able to marry somebody. Our love should be able to extend to all people and express in different sorts of ways. It's not a negation of love that A can't marry B. You're still able to show them love, compassion, and concern. But the halacha is, as I say, that the convert can't marry a Cohen. Rabbi Kibi, was he the son of converts? Yes. Did his parents have any Jewish roots? I can't answer that question properly. We're not sure. There is one view that he's the son of converts, but we don't really know the background of that. Living in the land of Israel at that time, there were converts, and Herod's father, Antipater, the Idumean, had undertaken, when he was exercising power, forced conversion. And so you had many people that had become associated with Judaism, but yet nevertheless felt uncomfortable about it. And those people then were dispersed in the country. And it could well be that Rabbi Akiva's forebears had that sort of background. And sometimes social conditions lead to that. I heard, I'm not sure if it's actually the case, but at the time that America still had its slavery, a source of shame on any country that's had slaves, but at a time it still had its slavery period, and there were religious Jews, they had them as Jewish slaves, and then when they gave them their manumission, they became fully fledged Jews. And so it's possible that sort of Black Jewish communities, the Black Jews of Harlem, might have originated from being the slaves in religious Jewish houses under, as it were, under that particular period in America's history.
Diane, how many? There's one question. How many prospective candidates have a Jewish father? Oh, sorry. How many prospective candidates have a Jewish father and a non-Jewish mother?
I've said, we have quite a number that come through that route. Quite a number come through that route, and as I say, obviously we take full recognition of that. This is not someone who's necessarily a sort of coming from another religion and therefore needs to sort of integrate into the community. Some of these people feel very much part of the community. They may have parents who, as I say, members of progressive congregations that may be very high up in the community. But in order to, say, marry someone in the Orthodox community, they realize this is something they need to do, and we want to know that they're prepared to do it themselves.
How many people start the process, and then what percentage of people do you feel kind of drop out?
So what's the dropout rate? The dropout rate is relatively low because, in a sense, we don't really want to start the process unless someone really shows the indication that they are going to be able to take it forward. And so we will discourage someone from beginning that process unless they're going to be in a job in which they can keep Shabbat and be able to observe kashrut and appreciate what's involved. And that's where a local Orthodox rabbi and the community is going to be very helpful, that they're able to answer those questions for a candidate. And the majority, I can only think, in a handful of cases, etc., where for various reasons it's not gone forward. The vast majority of cases that once we start to meet them at the Beth Din, they go through to their completion.
Can a Cohen's daughter, I'm just reading from the chat, can a Cohen's daughter marry a convert?
Yes. It's only the Cohen himself who can't.
It appears that the religious bar for converts is much higher than the average observance of United Synagogue member. Is that correct? And if so, why?
Okay.
If this is Belmont versus St. John's Wood, we're very different.
1 second. I've just been signed out. Where are we?
You're still here.
You're still here. We can hear you loud and clear, Diane.
Good. Right. Okay. So I just fine. Let's just move myself around. Sorry, remind me the question. The religious bar. Look, what's required is that person is observing Judaism the way that it needs to be observed. Now, look, I love and I feel very close to all the members of my community. Obviously, some a bit more close than others, and they're a lovely, amazing people. But they themselves would prepare to concede, not doing everything. We do some, do others, etc. Becoming Jewish is like, how can I put it? It's like obtaining citizenship. So if you want to become the citizen of a country, you've got to be prepared to undertake its laws. And if a person were to say, I want British citizenship, but look, VAT or income tax is not something that I'm going to be particularly diligent about. So we'll say, look, I'm sorry, you can't do it. There have been prominent individuals who tried to get British citizenship and it's not been available to them because they're not prepared to be regarded and deemed as acceptable to Her Majesty's government. And so, as far as if a person to convert to Judaism, they can't do it with reservations. Yeah, I'll do the good things, but the Shabbat Muktzah, I can't handle Muktzah. Or when it comes to some things about the second day of Chag, that's not for me, etc. So they've got to be prepared to be genuine about accepting what Judaism does. You tell me there are many people in St. John's Wood Shul that don't do X, Y, and Z. Okay. I want to help them on their journey towards doing it all. I accept them as they are. But a person can't be converted to do Judaism on the understanding they're only going to do some things and not others. Now, once someone has converted to Judaism, they become a complete Jew. If they lapse, what's the situation? Do they lose their conversion? No, they don't. That person, once they're Jewish, they're Jewish. What if they were never sincere in the first place? Then it could be that the Beth Din was misled. And there have been instances in countries, Israel, other parts of the world, where it transpired that a convert was in fact kidding the Beth Din all along. And if that in fact is proved to be the case, then that conversion would be deemed to be, as it were, void ab initio, because it was undertaken under false pretenses. But that's very, very rare, very, very rare. But as I say, we hope and sincerely pray that once a candidate has undertaken that completed conversion, they will continue to be a loyal member of the community. We've had some more queries on the chat, have we?
Should I read them out? So
yes,
the question's been asked. Firstly, an Israeli Are Israeli Orthodox conversions recognized here in the UK? And similar question was asked by someone else. Would a conversion to a Sephardi shul be recognized? So I suppose the question in general is other institutions and ethnicities of Judaism conversions.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, we will recognize Orthodox conversions of properly constituted Orthodox communities, etc. As long as what's been done has been done in good faith. There is a sort of undertaking, an understanding between communities. It was instituted by the Israeli chief rabbis a number of years ago, that we want to avoid people undertaking what we call forum shopping. That someone will hear about a rabbi in X, someplace abroad, that will do you a quickie job. And you'll go there for 6 months, etc., and etc. Then it will do you, and you'll come back and live in the UK. The communities across the world have undertaken that we will only undertake conversions for candidates who live in our communities, where we feel they are part of the community and they are known to us in the community, rather than simply come from abroad, etc. And so that's the general situation. That so someone has been living in Israel, converted to Judaism, and then comes to live in this country. Yes, and that's a conversion undertaken by the Israeli chief rabbinate. Then, of course, that conversion will be recognized. If someone was living in the UK, went out to Israel and got a conversion, and there was the process was, as it were, a more spurious one, that's when the problems arise. But as I say, conversions undertaken by reputable Batei Din in other parts of the world, other communities, the Sephardi communities, you say, Federation of Synagogues, etc. Then, of course, those we recognize by the London Bet Din. The Union Orthodox Hebrew congregations, the Adas, they don't do conversions. But as I say, the London Bet Din are doing the majority of conversions in this country. A few are done by the Federation and the Sephardim. And conversions for people living out of London, so in Manchester, for example, the candidates will be living in Manchester, be taught by local teachers, but the final process is being performed in London under the London Bet Din.
Diane,
Stella
has a question, but
she's muted.
Can we unmute Auntie Stella?
I've asked Auntie Stella to unmute, but she needs to press the button on her device. Stella,
Okay.
you can unmute.
Stella, you need to get your
she
lady.
can't hear you. She can't hear
No,
you.
she can.
Okay, in the
She can
meantime, we'll
ask
go to another question. We'll try and get her question.
Okay.
So it's been asked on the chat, how does one balance keeping halacha and kibbud av v'aim when converting?
A good question. A good question. Thank you for asking that question. When someone is converting to Judaism, we do not want them to be seen by their biological family as being lesser human beings in terms of their respect for their origins. I say to a candidate, your mother, your father have given you the gift of life. There cannot be any greater gift than that, and you have to be eternally grateful to them. The fact that you've chosen a different spiritual path and chosen to become Jewish doesn't in any mean you should honor them less. Now, that doesn't mean to say then you have to then go home and eat the dinner that your mother cooks for you in an non-kosher pot. That's not the only way of honoring, and you'll have to come to an understanding where you're not going to be able to enjoy her home-cooked food in that particular way. Obviously, she's prepared to do it in a kosher, acceptable way. That's different. But we will just say, in terms of the way that you should show them honor and show concern and show respect, that shouldn't in any way be diminished as a result of your conversion to Judaism. As I say, maybe practically certain things you can't do as you previously used to do. But in terms of the honor, that still has to be there.
And I suppose that continues from not just in the conversion process, but all the way through.
Of course, there's no question about it. That should be there. And they shouldn't feel, oh, my kid converted to Judaism and they're not interested in me anymore. That's not the case. You know, our candidates will, once they've graduated from conversion, will be calling their father, their mother, the case may be, and still wanting to be in touch. And we would be wanting to do that, not in any way diminish it. it shouldn't be a spiritual influence, once a candidate is married and got her own kids, etc., say her non-Jewish mother is coming to stay, then she'll have to balance the issues in terms of, if she's planning to go to church on the Sunday morning, she can't take her grandchild with her. You've got to be able to handle that in a sensible manner. But there's no reason why the relationships can't continue, after someone's converted.
And the majority of the people on this call this evening are not converts. What can we all do to make a convert feel more welcome and support them as communities?
Well, if someone is interested in conversion, then they'll come to a synagogue and want to see what it's like, and being a friendly support at that particular point, showing an interest in them and their well-being. The conversion process is a lonely one. And it can have great emotional stresses because a person is really undergoing an internal change, and it can put a lot of stress on them, especially if they're in a relationship. The people move at different paces, and it can be a lot of stress. And so, being a supportive friend is something that we can do in a community. You have to be honest with yourself as to whether your standard of observance is something that is going to be challenged by what this conversion candidate is now doing. And you have to be honest with yourself as to whether you can, as it were, take forward that friendship in the same way. And as I say, we can be inspired by and the conversion graduates who can be in shul long before we are. They're davening much more sincerely than we are, and it can make us off take notice of how we are living our lives, etc. But being a supportive friend, and often the friendship continues at a later stage. When people are converted, they don't have that extended Jewish family that we all take for granted. And so when it comes for their kids getting into Jewish schools or finding marriage partners, etc., then a community really can be there to support and befriend and offer assistance. And so, those are the things that we can do as a community.
Diane, does the Beth Din itself get involved with that kind of follow-up?
We will always say to a candidate, please be in touch with us. We'd want to hear about your news, etc., and we will. However, we were careful that we don't want them to feel, I had to study under the Beth Din for a couple of years, and they've still got their tabs on me. And so we step back. We'll send a 6-month letter. How are you doing? Let us know how things are. Please share your mazel tovs with us and so on. But one area I think where we're not doing what we should for candidates in the community, and that's in terms of matchmaking. There's some amazing girls and amazing guys out there who've gone through our process, and they need to be introduced. Now, I'm not sure it's our job as a Beth Din to be in shidduchim, but if any out there that wants to be a shadchan specializing in geirim, there's a market for you, and you'll be performing a wonderful mitzvah. So I throw that out to you out there if anyone is interested.
Michael Abrahams has a question.
Yes.
Stella's muted now.
Okay. All right.
Do you have a list of homes?
A list of homes? You mean where people...
Where they can live while they're converting?
Yes, we do. Yes. I mean, sometimes people offer themselves to us and say, they often goes by recommendation that, my friend had a candidate living with them, we'd be interested, or, my cousin was tutoring a candidate, we could be interested in them, we will meet up. What we do point out to the candidate is that you're the client, and you're paying for the service that you receive. And if for some reason it's not to your satisfaction, you don't get on for whatever reason, then let us know. We'll try and sort someone else out for you. Chemistry is very important, and some people heat it off with one another. And for some reason, sometimes it doesn't work out. And so we don't want to feel that they're, as it were, condemned to be with a particular family or a particular tutor. We do try and make it work and match them in the right sort of way.
Fair enough.
Doreen, I think
yes,
like to ask
I'd like to ask Diane, a couple, a husband and wife, the husband isn't Jewish, but the wife is.
Mhm.
Now, what happens to the children? I don't know if this is true, but they say that the children are automatically Jewish because
Correct.
of the bloodline.
That's right. Absolutely. So if
They don't need to convert or anything.
absolutely, they don't need to convert at all. So if a Jewish woman happens to marry a man who is not Jewish, then she is halachically Jewish, and her children are halachically Jewish. No conversion is necessary. Obviously, we would love her partner to go through a conversion process, because then he can be complete in providing a background to the family. So, you know, if he wants to be in shul, it's not just sort of sitting in the back row, and but he can be in the front row. He can have an aliyah, it can be a chairman, be a gabba, as the case may be a rabbi. You know, it's all there. But certainly, nevertheless, as long as the mother is Jewish, the children are Jewish.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Michael, do you want to unmute yourself? Do you have a question?
Any questions?
And I think that concludes all the questions
Okay.
for this session.
Lovely.
Thank you so much for this incredible, insightful session. And we are very grateful to you and our dear friends at Belmont and St. John's Wood for joining all of us this evening. And the program continues next Wednesday, and then 2 more consecutive weeks with a finale from Diane Gelly from the London Beth Din.
Right. I just saw one question, one candidate. Can they choose their own Hebrew name? Yes, of course they may. Choose whatever name they would like to have. And we're delighted, you know, with that. Okay. My blessings, and take care.
Thanks so much, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Very important.
Bye, Stella.
Is Edward Aspis there?
Oh, yeah.